divide that into two categories. One is the sham litigation and the second is the aggressive litigations. Most of us who are in IP, we know that the real inventions are far and few. Most of the patents which are granted on the incremental inventions. And some of the patents are really weak patents. But innovator companies do not hesitate in listing these weak patents in Orange Book, because by asserting these patents, they can get a 30-month automatic stay on the FDA approval of the generic product. So one such example is Androgel, which is a testosterone gel. The patents which are listed in the Orange Book are the formulation patents, and they talk about isopropyl myristate as the penetration enhancer. The role of IPM is actually to speed up the delivery of testosterone from skin to the blood. And the patent is listed in the Orange Book. Teva and Perrigo, they filed their ANDA and they were sued by the innovator. And actually, if you look at Teva and Perrigo's product, they have not used IPM as the penetration enhancer. They have used a different penetration enhancer. And if you look at the prosecution history of the patents which are listed in the Orange Book, the claim is very, very narrow, because any equivalent of IPM has been surrendered during the prosecution to get the patent. So we couldn't find any reasonable basis that why the innovator thinks that the penetration enhancer which is used by Perrigo and Teva, they are equivalent of the IPM. But when Teva asserted an antitrust counterclaim that the infringement suit constituted sham litigation, the innovator contested that, and later on Teva settled with the innovator for a specified date, and in effect the generic launch was delayed. So though there was a very narrow patent, a weak patent which could have been easily designed around, or which was actually designed around by the generic companies, but still the generic launch was delayed. Coming to the aggressive legal strategies, we are increasingly seeing that in the products which are anyways now most of the generic companies are trying to move their portfolio from the simple generics to the complex generics, because for simple generics there are more than 10 ANDA filers on day one. So to avoid that competition and to have certain niche in the market, they are trying to work on the complex products. But for these complex products, the innovator companies are also using aggressive legal strategies to delay the generic launches. Bivalirudin is a one good case which shows that how aggressive the innovator companies could be. This product is by Medicine Company. It is actually a lyophilized powder for injection, and it was approved way back in December 2000. At that point of time, they actually delayed their filing the application for patent term extension. And there was a long battle till the patent term extension was actually granted to them. And actually there was certain amendment in the law for them to get the patent term extension. If you look at the brief product development history, between 1997 to 2006, Medicine Company purchased pharmaceutical batches from Ben Venue. And in 2005, in one of the batches, the level of a certain impurity was higher than what is accepted by the FDA. When Medicine Company investigated, they found that to adjust this impurity, if you add pH adjusting solution during the compounding process, you can actually reduce the impurity. And in 2008, Medicine Company filed a patent application. They actually filed 2 patent applications on it, and the patent was granted to them. The patents were on composition and product by process, and it also had the pH limitation and the impurity limitations. And these patents were listed in the Orange Book. 11 ANDA filers actually filed para 4 against these patents, out of which 3 settled for 2019. And when the settlement happened, at that point of time, we thought that the product patent is expiring in 2015. Why generic companies like Teva, they are settling for 2019 when the other patents can be designed around? But now when we are in 2016, we think they made a wise choice at that point of time. So, the parties which are litigating right now, Hospira is at the advanced stage. So just to give you the brief of the litigation which has happened till date, in August 2010, Medicine Company had sued Hospira, and during the Markman hearing, in the composition patent also the process limitations were brought in, and based on that, District Court decided that there is no infringement by Hospira's proposed vial, though the patent is valid. So the decision on validity was cross-appealed by Hospira, and the decision on non-infringement was cross-appealed by Medicine Company. In 2015, Appeals Court invalidated both the patents based on the on-sale bar. They said that 1 year before filing, Medicine Company had hired Panvanu to prepare 3 batches of bivalirudin using embodiment of the patented method. And therefore, there is an on-sale bar because experimental use exception cannot occur after the reduction to practice has happened. So, the appeals court actually reversed the district court determination that the on-sale bar does not apply. But the case did not stop here. In July 2015, Medicine Company filed combined petition for panel rehearing and rehearing in bank, which has been granted by the court. And now the July 2015 decision of the appeals court has been vacated and the appeal has been reinstated. And the current status is that the hearing is scheduled for second quarter of 2016 and the decision can be expected in the end of 2016. So, a product on which the product patent with the patent term extension, which itself was little dicey, expired in 2015. Still, there is no certainty whether the generics can come in or not. And if on en banc hearing, court decides that on-sale bar does not apply and sends it back to the panel for reconsideration, then in that case, the decision may come in 2017 or 18. So now when we look back and see that why Teva and other companies settled for 2019, there look to be some sense in that. So if you look at the sequence of the events, a product which was approved in 2000, till date, we have no certainty when the generics can come in. Hospira currently, by the way, is in the market, but they are contemplating whether to continue because now it is at risk launch. And we have no surety whether it will come in 2017 or 18. The other strategy which is used by the innovator company is the improper use of restricted drug distribution program. For a generic company to get FDA approval, they have to do the bioequivalence testing. And for that, they need limited amount of the innovator samples. For some of the products which are high-risk products or can have high toxicity, FDA actually restricts the distribution by implementing REMS program. And innovator companies, they improperly use this REMS program so that the generic companies cannot get the innovator sample to do the bioequivalence studies. So all the customary distribution channels are blocked by the innovator companies. And when you directly approach the innovator company for the innovator sample, because you don't want to actually use any illegal means to get the samples, they refuse because they have no obligation to supply the samples to the generic company. So if the generic company doesn't get the innovator sample, they can't do the bioequivalence testing, which is a prerequisite for getting the FDA approval, and they can't come in the market. So there are many products for which there are no generics, there are no patents limiting their entry into the market, but still there are the generic companies are not able to pick up those products because the innovator samples are not available. Another strategy which I want to talk about is the product hopping or the brand migration or the line extension. There are several products for which there are incremental inventions, innovations or reformulation by the innovator. So by the time ANDA filers file their product for the first product, the innovator company switches the market to the second product. And it may or may not be better than the previous product, but this is the strategy to extend the life of the product, because then the market has already switched, and the generic company which has filed the ANDA for the previous product has no market for that product. Bendamustine is one example, which is by Teva. The first product was approved in March 2008. It is a lyophilized powder which requires reconstitution and dilution, and it is administered over 30 to 60 minutes. If you look at the Orange Book patents, there are several patents which are listed in the Orange Book and which go from 2026 to 2031, and they cover polymer of impurity and the formulation. There were several ANDAs which were filed, and out of the 20 ANDAs, 11 were FTFs. There were a couple of 505(b)(2)s also which were filed for this product. And most of the filers have actually settled. They have settled for a date of November 2019, but some are still in litigation. But what Teva did was that it came up with the second approval in September 2013. This product is ready to dilute solution, and it does not require the reconstitution, while the previous product required the reconstitution and the dilution both. And this product also is administered between 30 to 60 minutes, and again there are patents on polymer formulation and impurity. Then came the third approval. Actually, the Eagle, which is a generic company, filed a 505(b)(2) to the first product of Teva, and this is a rapid infusion product. It has a lesser dilution, like it is a 50 ml product. So this can be administered faster than the previous products, which had 500 ml of volume to be administered. And now Teva has licensed this product from Eagle, and trying to shift the market to this latest product. And if you look at the patent which is listed in the Orange Book, they go till 2033. So the first product was introduced in March 2008, and then it was switched to another product in September 2013, and now in December 2015 it has come to a low volume infusion, and we don't know in the future how many more products will come in this. So that way they are trying to extend the life cycle of the product, and every time ANDA filings are happening for a previous product, Teva is switching to the next product. The other strategy which innovator companies are using are the regulatory hurdles. As I mentioned, that most of the generic companies are trying to work on the complex products. So these complex products have complexities around either there could be a biocomplexity, there could be a characterization complexity. So depending on what complexity you are working on, you need to design around the patents related to that. But what innovator companies are doing, they are actually approaching FDA, they are filing citizen petition and telling FDA that the changes which generic company is making to come out of the patent actually can jeopardize the therapeutic efficacy of the product, and it should not be approved by FDA. Glatramar is a very good example of that. In this, actually 8 citizen petitions were filed by Teva. If we look at the background of the product, it is indicated for relapsing form of multiple sclerosis, and it comes in pre-filled syringes, which is for subcutaneous injection. The product was approved in 2002, and it was a 20 milligram per ml product, and it is for once a daily administration. And it is Glatramar is a peptide copolymer. There were 4 patents listed in the Orange Book which were expiring in May 2014, and then there was a process patent which was going till September 2015. Teva sued Sandoz and Momenta. Actually, Momenta is a development partner for Sandoz. They filed their application and Teva sued them for the Orange Book patent as well as the non-Orange Book process patent. District Court decided that the patents are valid and infringed. However, when it went to the Appeals Court vacated the decision of District Court in part and declared that the 2015